All right, let's get started then. So this morning on copying questions, I'm glad that Maggie's here because she's asked me the question that I'm going to answer today. So Maggie has sent me a message and said that she currently has REDS or RED-S for the second time while marathon training. And is that something that she's prone to? Good morning, Carly. So I'm glad that you're online, Maggie, because this will be super helpful for you. And I guess, unfortunately, it's quite common or has become common in active people. And it's a really easy fix, but you just need the right sort of people in your corner and implement some strategies to get to the bottom of it. So what is RED-S? Before I even get started, I want to explain what it actually is. So it's called relative energy deficiency in sport, and we shorten that to RED-S. And it used to be the old female athlete triad. It was like an interconnection of three facets. So disordered eating, bone health, and menstrual function. But we now know so much more about it, and it's extended beyond the scope of just those three things, and also extended beyond just females. So it refers to the impaired physiological function that happens with energy deficiency. And it includes, but it's not limited to, good morning, Laura, this is perfect for you too. It's not, so RED-S is the impaired function of a bunch of things, but I guess the main ones are metabolic rate, so that can be reduced if energy deficiency. Menstrual function is definitely one as well. Bone health, your immune system, protein synthesis is impaired, and cardiovascular function and health. So all of those facets, they're caused by relative energy deficiency. So either inadequate energy intake, so you're not getting enough nutrition in, or increased energy expenditure. So for you, Maggie, if you started doing marathon training and your energy output has increased, then that just may be a time where you need to increase the amount of energy that goes down the hatch as well. So in terms of if it's something that you're prone to, no, it's not something that is like an illness that you're just prone to, like an allergy or something. It is something that you need to probably just be a bit more diligent on and work to make sure it doesn't happen when you increase your training load. Okay, so when we talk about energy intake, our body fuels training first. And so it still needs enough energy just to survive and do your daily functions, as well as somebody that's growing. They're extra requirements as well. So you have a baseline energy intake, like your basal metabolic rate. And so even when you're asleep, you're burning calories. And then when you start to move, that increases. And then if you throw growing, like the body needs more energy to grow, that increases your energy expenditure or energy needs as well. And then training is a whole nother layer on top of that. So if you find that you're prone to getting menstrual irregularities when you increase your training load for marathon running, then it tells me that you're just not doing a good job with your nutrition when that happens. So a couple of signs and symptoms that REDS may be something that is a challenge for you. So and some indicators that nutrition is a big component that needs to be adjusted. So not training very well, or feeling really flat in sessions and no energy for the back end. So I'm not talking about like where you're pushing yourself to the limit and you're fatigued because you've done a really good session. I'm talking about like you're dragging your ass to training. You don't have energy to keep pushing towards the back end. You're fading in the back end of sets. And also, I guess, racing too. We're just kind of fatigued and feeling really flat. Another indication that RED-S may be an issue for you is really poor recovery. So you're not recovering well between sessions if you're doing double session days. And an indicator, like if you've got I'm kind of in the back of my head, I'm thinking endurance athletes, right? Because that's my specialty. But say a triathlete, they've got usually double session days during the week and then longer training sessions on the weekend. So if come Friday, you're already feeling flat and fatigued, then chances are you're not doing a good job of your nutrition early in the week, and you're not recovering properly from those sessions too. So that's an indicator to me that nutrition needs to be adjusted somewhere. If you're constantly getting sick and injured, that's another indicator that things aren't working properly. So whether it's just picking up constantly colds and flus all the time, or you're getting lots of niggles, like soft tissue. The other end of the spectrum, I guess, is getting bone stress injuries. That's like a big, like it's almost like too late by that point. Once you've had a bone stress injury, like your body's like, it's, you know how you talk about the feather, the brick and the truck analogy, like as warning signs? Like I'm talking, these are the feathers, these signs and symptoms, and then like a stress fracture is the brick, or no, sorry, the truck, just being like, you need to stop training, you need to eat more. This is your last warning sign that things aren't working properly. So another sign and symptom is gut issues. So yeah, whether it's during training, outside of training, just having some GI issues that may not necessarily be normal for you, or they're getting worse. A big indicator for females is menstrual function irregularity. So whether it's lighter than normal, or it's starting to not happen regularly, or completely absent for months, like it's kind of it's a continuum generally. And we know that just 3 days of not eating properly in a month cycle to support training is enough to drop a menstrual function out for that month. So it's something you need to be really on top of quickly, and be more aggressive with your nutrition, because a small window of not doing a good job with your nutrition to support training is enough to drop that out for that month. So I guess all of RED-S is a bit of a continuum, right? So on one end of the spectrum, you've got a healthy athlete, menstrual functions regular, training really well, recovering quickly, has the energy for training, good bone mineral density as well. And then the other end of the spectrum is, you know, no menstrual function, osteoporosis, and a whole heap of these symptoms that I'm going through. So it's not a you have it and you don't. It's very much a continuum where even across a year or a training cycle, things can kind of go up and down in that continuum as well. So the truck analogy, the truck warning sign is this end, like your bone mineral density is low, you've got no menstrual cycle, and you know things aren't working properly, you've had a stress injury. Whereas yeah, like the other end of the spectrum is none of those things. And so some warning signs along the way are, yeah, not training well, recovering poorly, getting sick and injured all the time, gut issues, menstrual function starting to do weird things. It's either like becoming quite light, which is not normal for you, or the days are shortening, or you're missing occasional months across the year. For males, an indicator can be reduced sex drive, because obviously guys don't have a menstrual cycle. That's their warning sign for them. But testing things like testosterone across your season can be a good way to see if anything's going awry. Or yeah, just reduce sex drive as well. I think guys have a good understanding of that. Like I don't mind talking to them about it. And yeah, generally guys that I talk to are like, oh yeah, you know, when I am in heavy training mode, that's definitely not on my mind. So an indicator that things might starting to be moving along that continuum a little bit. Another, I guess not a sign or a symptom, but something for me as a dietitian is when I see somebody eating the same thing every day, and training is not the same every day. So I bang on all the time about periodized nutrition. I think it's so important that you match your nutrition to your training load, right? You should be eating different on a light training day, or like a sleep in and maybe just one session in the evening. That sort of day should be different with your nutrition compared to a double session intense day. We might do a hard run or hard ride in the morning and then a squad swim in the evening, and both of them are quite hard and intense. That's a different type of eating day to then say a weekend long ride, maybe with a run off the bike or a long run day. Those sort of 3 days, your nutrition needs to be different and have that periodized approach so that it's not just blanket, I eat this every single day. So for me, that's an indicator that things aren't sort of working well for that athlete, because your energy intake is stable across that week. It flatlines. whereas your energy expenditure, so your training load, might be below it or above it. Like it's very much up and down across the week, but nutrition is the same. And what we want to see is that your energy intake matches. So it drops down on lighter days, it increases on heavy training days, and it potentially even goes up higher on those big long brick sessions on the weekends. Another sign or symptom is sort of restriction eating, like restricted behaviors or food rules or things like that. And then also, I guess, binging behavior. So whether it's either one of those or both of them, I find a lot of athletes, and not necessarily Red S athletes, a lot of people restrict their food earlier in the day. Particularly females. I don't mean to pick on you, but it's just something with our female psyche where we try and restrict food around training. And then the body's really good at playing catch up. So by the time you're hitting afternoon, after lunch, where you kind of open the floodgates, it's hard to stop eating, and a lot of binging behavior happens there. Or also after dinner, when you finally get to sit down and relax for the day. And you've got more time and easy access to the pantry or the cupboard, I find a lot of binging sort of behavior happens there, because the body's trying to catch you up, right? You've just put it in a hole in the morning with training hard and not eating properly. And then the body's like, hang on a minute, you haven't given me enough calories or enough carbohydrate. I don't have enough energy for today. So I'm going to send out all my hunger hormones and make you catch that up. And then we're more likely to overeat there too, because it is not a very mindful, controlled type eating scenario, and it's often not the right things too. So I guess there are a few signs or symptoms for relative energy deficiency in sport. And I guess I need you to understand that it is a continuum. So it's not like, Maggie, you suddenly have Red S and you didn't before. It's just that when your training load increases for marathon, you need to increase your energy intake to match that. Otherwise, you'll start to get these signs and symptoms. You know, your menstrual function might start to drop when you do when running season comes around. So I guess, like, what do you do about it, right? What's the treatment? What's the fix? I've kind of given you a couple of ideas at the moment already for how to do it. I guess firstly is getting a thorough assessment. So it's not something you can diagnose yourself necessarily, and it takes a bit of a multidisciplinary approach to do it. But a couple of tests that you can do is your bone mineral density on a DEXA scan, particularly if there's been no menstrual function for 6 months. That's a really good idea to actually go and check if your bone mineral density is being affected by not eating properly. You can check your thyroid hormones to see if they're working. You can check your female sex hormones or male sex hormones too. So like guys checking your testosterone, and females checking what your estrogen levels and all those female sex hormones across the month are. Often with athletes that have reduced energy deficiency, their female sex hormones are just through the floor. They're close to zero. Like, there's not that beautiful flow of estrogen and progesterone across the month. And so the number one priority, if that's you, is getting those hormones back up again to get a menstrual cycle. Now, a lot of uneducated GPs will just put somebody on the pill to get a resumption of menstrual cycle, but it's a fake bleed. It's not a real menstrual cycle. It's not actually fixing the problem. It's masking the problem. And so make sure that you don't go on the pill to fix it. You really need to work through your nutrition to get to the root cause of the problem, rather than just kind of masking it with an oral contraceptive pill. So, like, as an example, working with the Triathlon Australia athletes, a lot of them, I couldn't tell you if anyone's on the pill, because the clearest indication of whether they're doing a good job with their nutrition or not is whether they have a regular menstrual cycle, and we can't necessarily tell that if they're on the pill. So yeah, I guess don't go to a normal GP and get put on the pill if this is you. Definitely work with a multidisc team. So when I talk about multidisc team, I'm talking about having a sports physician in your corner. I'm happy to guide people on where to go for that. There's a really good sports physician in Brisbane that works with a lot of female athletes and is good with Red S. You also want to work with your coach or your physio or your exercise physiologist or whoever it is that you're working with on training, because they need to be on the same wavelength as everyone else when we're trying to get your energy intake to match your energy expenditure, right? So there's no point like flogging you in training if you're not working with a dietitian to get that part right too. And then I guess, yeah, the most important person in your corner for relative energy deficiency in sport is a sports dietitian, right? So the simple, well, not simple, I'm not saying it's easy, but the easiest fix for it is nutrition. And it doesn't necessarily mean eating more for people, it's eating more strategically. So yeah, a lot of red S athletes potentially need to eat more, but eating more where it counts too. And it doesn't necessarily mean eating more volume, like you don't need to eat massive meals or go on some weight gainer shakes or anything like that. It's putting nutrition where it counts and making sure that you're doing a good job of your fueling and recovery around training sessions. That's a priority. And then your overall energy intake each day needs to match that training load too. So I guess I would see a sports dietitian too, rather than just a general dietitian, because a general dietitian is not going to have any idea about nutrition for training. So you want to work with a sports dietitian and someone that works with red S athletes too, rather than just like a regular sports dietitian. I guess we all have our specialities. So if you're still on, Maggie, if you've got any questions, give me a holler. But to answer your question, it is definitely like if it's something that you're prone to, then you need to do a better job of supporting your marathon training. So it's not something that you should just be like, oh, well, it's marathon training, I'll drop my period out for 6 months, because you're actually doing really long-term damage to your bones and your cardiovascular system and your immune function by doing that. So work with a sports dietitian to actually get a training nutrition plan to support your training week, specifically for, you know, shorter run days, rest days, your interval type run sessions like fartleks or hills, and then your long run days is also really important, so that what you're doing across the week varies and it's not just the same thing day in, day out. That's super, super important. Because remember, the body fuels training first. So it needs enough energies to support its daily functions. And if it's fueling training and putting all of that energy into that, then it's immediately going to drop a menstrual cycle out because you don't have enough energy for it. And so why does it want you, like, why would it let you then like have a baby? You know, that's why we have a cycle. That's what females are designed for. If you don't have enough energy for you. So obviously it's going to drop a menstrual cycle out, so that doesn't happen. But that's definitely not a good thing. So when we talk about the continuum, like that's further down the continuum, right? If you have no menstrual function for a longer period of time, the longer that is, the further down the continuum you go. Okay, and you're pulling bone matrix from your bones and running the risk of having osteoporosis. And if you've already laid down your peak bone mass, then like that's not a good position to be in. And again, that's further down the continuum. If things aren't working properly, then getting a stress fracture is unfortunately like down that continuum as well. And then we know that once you've had a stress fracture, your chance of having another one's really high too. So we don't want you down that far down the continuum. We want your nutrition as you build into your marathon season to match that increasing training load. Okay, are you with me, Maggie, still? So definitely I suggest working with a sports dietitian. Maybe if you don't have a sports physician already, getting linked in with someone there and just running a few tests to make sure that, you know, your hormones are working properly, your bone mineral density is not being affected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, number one key thing would be to work with a sports dietitian, get your training nutrition sorted so that as your training load builds into whatever you're doing, like Brisbane Marathon, Gold Coast Marathon, Sunny Coast, all of the running seasons coming up, that you're not doing damage to your body long-term through that training build and beyond. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Maggie. It's a pretty deep topic. Definitely don't want to dive too deep into it in 20-minute coffee and questions. So if you need help, reach out, and yeah, definitely suggest seeing a sports dietitian. So if you want help with your nutrition, I'm more than happy to help you or guide you with a local sports dietitian in your area if you're not local or prefer to see someone face to face. All right, guys, if there's no questions, I will wrap up. And anyone that's not online and watching the replay, if you've got any questions later, feel free to send me a message and happy to answer that for you offline. Now, I'm going to put out a post each week to ask you if you've got any questions for me too. So if you have any questions, pop it into, I threw it on Instagram yesterday, or send me a message through Facebook, however you communicate. And I'm happy to jump on Thursdays and answer those questions for you. So I hope that helped, Maggie. Reach out if you need some help, specifically one-on-one with your nutrition. More than happy to help. And I'll see you guys next week.